The word should can carry so many emotions and expectations with it. I personally used to live in a world where I would should on myself a lot, and it's something that I see often in my clients when they first start meeting with me. The problem with coming from a place of should is that it puts a lot of undue pressure and expectations on yourself and others that can oftentimes contribute to more stress and anxiety. In this episode, I'll be sharing how to let go of should so you can feel less stressed. This is episode number 108, letting go of shoulds so you can feel less stressed. Welcome to Calmly Coping. My name is Tati. I'm a licensed therapist and coach specializing in high-functioning anxiety. I help high achievers let go of anxiety, self-doubt, and burnout so they can feel calm and confident from within. Thank you so much for tuning in. Shoulding on yourself consists of telling yourself that you have an obligation to do something that is different from what you're doing. In cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a therapeutic approach, there are phrases known as cognitive distortions. And cognitive distortions are essentially inaccurate ways of thinking. So they are thoughts that might result in you feeling more anxious or feeling more down or just having a negative perception because they're not based in fact. So things like assuming the worst case scenario or looking at only the negative in a situation are examples of cognitive distortions. And one example is shoulding on yourself or using the word should or should have or could have or would have or any variations of that. So the reason why this is a cognitive distortion is that when you focus on should, you're often only focusing on one aspect of a situation, and oftentimes it's negative. So you're putting all of these expectations and stress on yourself and focusing a lot of times on something that you may not be able to change or influence. So especially if it's something about the past, like I should have done that differently or I should be doing this, it's really just creating this scenario where you're dissatisfied with what you've done, what you're doing, what you could do, etc. And that's really not going to help the situation, and it's just going to make you feel worse. So you can should on yourself as well as others. And many times there's an underlying expectation, pressure, and judgment that can come from these shoulds. Rather than being motivating, it's often criticizing towards yourself or towards others for something that you should be doing differently. This just creates more stress, anxiety, disappointment, frustration, you name it. I often suggest asking the question, is this helpful when you find yourself in a place of overthinking or having negative thoughts? And I would say 99% of the time, coming from a place of shoulds, that is not helpful. It's not helping the situation. It's not going to help you feel better. It's not going to help to change anything. So oftentimes you're just making yourself feel worse. So why do we should on ourselves? There's a few reasons that I've identified. So one could be that your expectations might differ from reality. I like to give the explanation that when your expectations, like let's say expectations, reality, when there's a gap here, that's often where suffering is. And that's because we are trying to resist what is. You know, if it's reality, this is what's here right now. It's not saying that you're necessarily always happy with it or okay with it, but coming from a place of shoulds is a way of kind of resisting that reality and what is that's just going to result in more suffering for yourself and potentially for others. Another reason why you might should is if you have high unrealistic expectations for yourself. And if you consider yourself to be high achieving and really focused on performance and success, then I can guess that you do have high and unrealistic expectations for yourself. And so it can be easy to find yourself in a place of should. I should have done better, or I should have noticed that and not made that mistake, or whatever else that might look like specifically for you. Another reason why you might use should is that you're trying to motivate yourself. And sometimes this motivation can come from a place of trying to incite disappointment or guilt to motivate yourself. I think guilt can come up a lot with shoulds because it's this feeling like, oh, I did something wrong. And a lot of times that's what brings up guilt. It's that feeling of doing something wrong. And sometimes we might have learned to do that growing up, that guilt has been a motivator, or it's something that you just might have gotten accustomed to doing. Another reason is kind of what I just touched on, is that it may be a learned behavior. So you may have learned to speak this way because it is what you witnessed, or because it's what you witnessed from others, or what you've seen other people around you doing. And so you might have just learned to speak this way and speak this way to yourself. And another reason why we might should is to use judgment and criticism to try and make ourselves feel better. So maybe it's to make ourselves feel better because we think that being hard on ourselves is going to get us where we want to be. Or maybe it is because you're shooting on other people and that judgment or criticism may temporarily make you feel better. Like, oh, you should have done this. How could you have not known that? And kind of from this place of superiority, when I know it's hard to acknowledge that sometimes you may be in a place of that, but I think it can happen. And if it does, that might be one of the underlying reasons. So next I want to talk about what can you do instead when you catch yourself shoulding. Before I get there, I want to talk about the sponsor for this episode, which is the Calm and Ambitious community. So this is my exclusive membership community for high achievers with high functioning anxiety. This is a private community for high achievers who want to learn how to calm their anxiety, cultivate their strengths and confidence, and prioritize self-care and balance in their lives so they can experience more joy and presence. So each month I provide a brand new training specific to high functioning anxiety, as well as a live Q&A call where my members can ask me all of their questions. And I'm also in the membership community, which is kind of like a forum where you can ask your questions whenever they come up for you. So you have access to ask me as well as the other members in the community all of the questions that come up for you, so you can really get support. And I find that the support aspect is really valuable because a lot of times with high functioning anxiety, you might tend to have difficulty asking for help. And as a result, feel like you have to do it on your own. And this can be a great practice in getting more comfortable asking for help, which is going to influence you in other aspects of your life. I also have an entire training in there on the cognitive distortions that I just discussed at the beginning of this episode to help you decrease anxious thoughts and feelings. And I guide you through exercises to work through that. So if you're interested in learning more and joining, then you can go to calmandambitious.com. I'm also going to leave a link to that in the show notes. So now back to the episode. So what do you do when you catch yourself in this place of shoulding? So I have 4 steps that I think will be helpful when you catch yourself in that moment. And it's not a perfect formula. You don't have to follow them step by step, but it's something that I find to be helpful if you're able to remember it. And if not, just catching yourself can be huge, because catching yourself is that moment of awareness. And it's that moment of, oh, wait, is this really helping me? Is this something that's serving me? So let me kind of break down those steps. So step 1 is what I just said. It's catching yourself and being kind to yourself. So if you notice yourself saying should, or if you notice yourself saying should to others, recognize that. You're not going to always catch yourself, and that's okay. And those moments that you do, be kind to yourself. Don't judge yourself for it, because when you judge yourself, you're just creating more negativity. And you're just basically accomplishing the opposite of what you want. By judging yourself, you're making yourself feel worse. You're making yourself feel more stressed, potentially anxious, potentially guilty. And that is the opposite direction of where we want to go. So catch yourself and be kind and recognize that we all do it. I do it as well, and nobody's perfect. So after that step of catching yourself, step 2 is to label your emotions. So identify whatever it is that you're feeling. Sometimes it can be challenging to do in the moment, and a tool that I love suggesting to my clients and students is the emotions wheel. So if you just type into Google emotions wheel, you can find it. I'm going to leave a link to my favorite one in the show notes. So basically just label, how are you feeling? Are you stressed, frustrated, overwhelmed, disappointed? This can really help you to step out of that emotional state of mind and more into an objective state of mind where you have this awareness and where you can then choose what's the next step that I want to take, rather than acting purely from this place of strong emotion. Step 3 is to ask yourself, is this helping me or is this making me feel worse? And I can probably guess when you're in a place of shoulds, it's probably not helping you. It's probably just making you feel worse. And then step 4 is to practice self-compassion and kindness. So be kind to yourself, because that in the long run is going to help you to just cultivate this attitude of being forgiving towards yourself and being understanding. And all of that is what allows you to be your own friend rather than being your own enemy. And this is what helps to decrease stress and anxiety, because rather than being in this place of heightened negative and difficult thoughts and emotions, you're more in this place of telling your body and your mind, it's okay, I can relax and I can get past this, which is the reality the vast majority of the time. So how can you accept where you are right now, let go of the past, let go of what you cannot change, and move forward without allowing the past and unrealistic expectations to hold you back. So when you're able to let go, like I've said in previous episodes before, this is a practice and it is not something that's going to come immediately. This letting go of the past, of what you cannot change, is what can allow you to move forward with more resiliency and with less stress and anxiety. So your action tip for this episode is to catch yourself in moments of shoulds, whether it's shoulding on yourself, whether it's shoulding on other people, and reflect on whether it is helping you or hurting you in the moment, and try to meet yourself with kindness and compassion. So I'd love to continue the conversation about this topic in my free Facebook community for high achievers with high functioning anxiety called Calmly Coping. You can join the conversation by going to calmlycoping.com/group, and I would love to hear from you. How often do you should on yourself, and what would be different if you didn't? So while you wait for next week's episode, I have other episodes about decreasing anxiety, adopting a healthy mindset, and managing your time and energy. You can check out these episodes here. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and until next time, be calm.